What's going on, everyone? So, a couple days ago now, I made a video diving into kind of the debate that's going on Dewey Riley's return. This really kind of stemmed from Courtney Cox. She still hasn't signed on, at least at the time of recording this video. Maybe things have changed since then, but also she mentioned that she wants to see David Arquette return to the franchise. And of course, this has caused a bit of a whirlwind, right? You got people on both sides, both camps, that have said that they want to see Dewey back. Other side is like, absolutely not. Keep it real. I expressed that I personally do not want to see Dewey return. Scream is and has always maintained a form of realism. Now, Scream does have unrealistic moments, does have movie logic, it does have movie moments, but for the most part, it is one of the more realistic horror franchises, period. And they've always really maintained that. They've always really maintained the continuity also. You don't want to see them start retconning stuff because that opens the door for other things. And then you get like a Halloween franchise where you have to have like an entire graphic and chart to map out which timeline is which and which is the, and I just don't want to see Scream become that. I don't want to see Scream become this franchise that becomes incredibly convoluted and it's just like, okay, well, these films tie into these ones, and then it's not what Scream has been. And I've seen people go, well, Chad survived and that was unrealistic. And look, I agree. I think what they did in Scream 6 was ridiculous. And I've been very critical about that. I've been very outspoken about that and believe that Chad should have died. But there's also a big difference between getting stabbed a bunch of times and getting literally gutted. Like, Dewey didn't just get stabbed a couple times. Like, Dewey's been stabbed a few times throughout the franchise and survived. Right? Even when that at times is kind of a little unrealistic. But nonetheless, it's like, okay, he survived an old scar tissue, right? They kind of justify it and write it off. Okay, fine, we'll buy it because we love Dewey. But we watched Dewey literally get gutted front to back. You're not just walking that off. Again, I get the Chad thing. I don't like the Chad thing. But we saw Dewey get gutted. Right? Like, that's not the same thing. It's not something where it's just like, just push it all back in. I'm good. Like, hey, hand me a cold one. We're fine. And I don't want to see it start to become unrealistic. But that doesn't mean you can't get Dewey and David Arquette back into the franchise in some creative ways, right? Why don't you just give Dewey the Randy treatment? And it would make a ton of sense. So in Scream 3, we get the Randy tape. And we get Randy making his movie and explaining kind of the rules of Scream 3. And obviously Randy died in Scream 2, so much so, and there was so much backlash to Randy dying that Wes Craven almost broke his rule in bringing him back. And yet they were like, they let cooler heads prevail and they said, you know what? Hey, we can't do that. Let's not bring him back as a character, but let's find a creative way to bring back Jamie Kennedy. And lo and behold, they brought back Jamie Kennedy as Randy, but in the form of a little home video. Why can't you do that with Dewey? And that would kind of make sense with Dewey, right? Like, if anyone would make a home video, it would be Dewey and his tie-in and connection into Randy. So you have this kind of homage and callback. Also, Scream 5 and 6 is just filled with callbacks to past Scream movies. This upcoming installment will probably have callbacks to past Scream movies, right? And it follows the pattern, right? Scream 5 was a remake of 96. Scream 6 was in a lot of ways similar to Scream 2. Scream 3, you could do some similarities. I hope it's not to the level of Scream 5 and 6, but you could have a nice little callback to Scream 3, nice little callback to the Randy tape, have a nice little callback to Dewey, and there you go, right? Simple, easy tie-in. You could have a whole scene with Dewey Riley, have an emotional moment between Gail and Sydney, right? Gail would have the tape, right? Because Dewey, him dying, Gail would probably have everything. So you could easily have an explanation of where the tape came from, right? Gail has the tape. She's just going through old boxes and going through old stuff. And maybe Dewey has some information on that tape that's important, that's significant. Talking about how this feels different and whatnot. Now, you'd have to have something that kind of ties in and makes sense to Scream 7, right? Because if you were to have that tape, then it would be a tape that would tie into, Scream 5. Where Randy's tape, yes, it technically would have been filmed during Scream 2, and he kind of touches over that, but then he goes, unless, you're dealing with the trilogy, right? And then kind of goes into that. So he kind of was prepared for even beyond that attack. So it wasn't just him relaying in time, but he even talks about Mickey, right? So you had this kind of tie-in to Scream 2, and it was filmed in Scream 2, but it had key information that pertained to Scream 3, and this being the third Ghostface coming after Sidney. So you'd have to do something similar with the Randy tape, or with the Dewey tape, where Dewey is, relaying some information that, yes, pertains to Scream 5. Maybe he even guesses the killer right, or something like that, right? Man, something just seems off about Richie, right? Because he even told Sam about Richie, right? I think it's Richie, but call me crazy type thing, right? And he just kind of has this little tape that has the tie-in, that has the callback, has a couple funny moments, right? You have a whole scene with Dewey, and then there you go, right? You could do a flashback sequence or something like that. You could do some other things, but I just think, given what we've seen with just Scream 5 and 6, and also the position that Dewey was in, and just kind of the brokenness that he had, living in this, this squalor in a lot of ways, right? He's just broken, alcoholic, all that stuff. You could have just kind of a broken Dewey relaying things, and, maybe have an extended tape version where he's telling, Gail how much he loves Gail, and Sidney, hey, Sidney, if you're watching this, I just want you to know, you've always been like a sister to me, blah, blah. Maybe he's even talking to Sidney's kids, right? You could have a real expanded story, right, with Dewey, and kind of have that emotional scene and moment. Maybe get something with Sidney, because we got nothing with Sidney in Scream 5 as far as the reaction with Dewey, and that still bothers me to this day. I'd love to see an emotional just moment, an emotional scene between Dewey, Gail, and Sidney, kind of a proper send-off to Dewey, because in a lot of ways that kind of felt like a proper send-off to Randy. And it'd be funny, seeing Dewey try to, navigate it. I don't even know if this thing's recording, right? And just kind of have, a silly but heartfelt, memorable moment that really is, a proper send-off. And this kind of feels like the last film with, the way that we know Scream to be in a lot of ways, right? I think that would be fun. You have the easy callback with Randy, this new, Spyglass and Riders and stuff like that. Love to have the callbacks. Love to kind of you just do a modern version. You do a modern version where you have Dewey going just like Randy, and maybe he even, remembers the tape and goes, hey, I saw Randy do this. I want to do it. Right? Because even in Scream 5, Dewey talks about how, if he goes into it, he's probably going to die. Dewey knew what was coming as soon as he got involved. He told you. He foreshadowed it. Right? So, he knew. He knew. It would make sense that he would kind of have his ducks in a row. And that Gail would eventually find the tape. Because, one, that's what Gail does. Two, you have likely all of Dewey's stuff going to Gail. So you likely have Gail, maybe she's rummaging through boxes and stuff right? She's in recovery or towards the end of recovery. You know, and maybe she hadn't been back to the apartment or her condo or whatever it was until, you know, since the attack. And she's just back there kind of going through stuff, finds, you know, one of Dewey's boxes, rummages through that Dewey box, ends up finding the Dewey tape, and then next thing you know, you have the cutaway scene where Gail's showing up to Sydney and is like, Sid, you gotta watch this. You know, this is important for us, type thing. And you kind of have this moment. Or maybe Sydney's even there helping Gail. Right? Maybe Sydney's helping Gail kind of go through all her stuff. And, you know, maybe Gail's trying to move out with Sydney to kind of just have somebody that she can trust and rely on and whatnot. Right? And they're kind of going through Dewey's old stuff, reminiscing, having callbacks. You have this, you know, fun, emotional scene. Maybe Dewey has some relics and stuff that, you know, that are just like callbacks to the previous Scream. You know, maybe Sydney's going to take Tatum's ashes or something and then, you know, put them next to Dewey's ashes, or maybe Gail wants to keep them, and then boom, they find the tape. Here's the tape, and you could just have an easy built-in story, in my opinion. That I'm okay with. I don't want to see Dewey come back and you start retconning and changing and doing all this. I'm not a fan of that. I don't want to see them do that. Because again, once you open Pandora's box, sometimes you can't close it, right? Like, and now all of a sudden it opens the door for other projects to now retcon this and retcon that. I mean, they didn't even retcon Scream 4. Right? Like, that still ties in. They brought Kirby back. Like, I just don't want to see them start retconning and changing stuff. And like, let Scream 4 has always kind of been a standalone. Let that kind of be its own thing. Scream 5 and 6, you know, that's the Sam and Tara story. And then now you got Scream 7 and you're building something new, but keep the continuity, tying in. You have the Randy tape, boom, win-win for all. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you think, like, yes, this is the best way to go about it? You have the nice little callback, makes sense, ties in. Do you think, no, silly, just no Dewey, period? Or do you think, like, no, you need to bring Dewey back full-fledged? However you feel, whatever your thoughts are. I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out. Me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.